Welcome to Save Point Sass, where every checkpoint comes with hot takes, chaotic tangents, and a little bit of shade.
Two queer gamers, wildly different play styles. Breaking down what we're playing, what's going on in gaming culture, and what deserves a health potion or a rage quit.
This is Save Point Sass. Load in, level up, and stay petty.
Welcome back. On this episode of Save Point Sass, we're going to be talking about what, Sean?
A bunch of exciting news that happened.
We're going to be talking about possible switch to Lite or switch to OLED. We're going to be talking about Bowser retiring from Nintendo. And we're going to be talking about
some exciting Metroid news.
Yeah, the big Metroid news of the week. So, let's start off. Are you excited about a new Switch 2 console after we just got ours?
Well, I would always do anything Nintendo provides. I'm that Nintendo fanboy, so if they release a new console, I'm getting it.
Really?
Maybe. I mean, is it going to cost $1,000?
Maybe. With these game prices, it might cost $1,000. But actually, rumors are saying that it's most likely a Switch to Lite. And some of them are guessing a $350 price point. How do you feel about that after we just threw down $500 on a Switch 2?
Well, that's interesting because I actually think some of the benefits we've seen with the Switch 2 have been in docked mode. So if it is indeed a Switch 2 Lite that doesn't have docked capabilities, I wonder if actually you're getting less value for your money even if it's cheaper.
So you don't think it's worth it?
I don't know if I would get a Switch 2 Lite just yet. I feel like, yes, the Switch 2 is heavier, but I feel like the ergonomics have been okay in handheld mode. But of course, this is the thing of you don't know what you don't have until you see something new, right? And then all of a sudden you see the Switch 2 is so light or so portable, and maybe that's the convincing mark.
There's also kind of some rumors that it might be a Switch to OLED. What do you feel about that? I know that you were one of the few who got to enjoy the Switch 1 OLED. I didn't get an OLED because it was expensive and because at that point I was waiting for Switch 2, but you decided to get an OLED, and from what you've said, I think you enjoyed it, right?
Yeah, I thought the Switch OLED was really nice to use in handheld. But one thing that's interesting is the Switch 2 screen is actually very nice, in my opinion, right? I think some could argue that maybe the OLED might have even been too bright in certain circumstances, right? So in a way, the Switch 2 screen maybe has a nice balance between clarity and display and the right settings for gameplay.
Was definitely a more modern screen than the regular Switch 1. I know I had an OG Switch 1, and you had a Zelda special edition Switch 1. And we know they went through a couple of different screen versions and upgrades. So yeah, I think, I witnessed you play your Switch OLED a couple of times too, and it just looks so impressive. And was a huge upgrade from Switch 1, and I think even though the Switch 2 is not OLED technology, they kind of carried over those advances. So in some ways, I agree with you that the Switch 2 screen it's a pretty okay screen for what we get. That actually reminds me that there's rumors before the Switch 2 Lite that there is a new Switch 2 screen found on demo kiosks in Japan. How do you feel about that?
I think that might just be the cost of being an early buyer, right? It's unfortunate that, as their build process gets more firm, that maybe the quality goes up. For the Switch 1, that was kind of for the consumer's benefit, right? Because those early Switch 1s were hackable, but then over time they locked it down, right? So that maybe is just the luck of the draw of being a day one buyer, right? Sometimes you luck out and you get a console that's better than the future consoles, and sometimes the processes improve and there are these underlying benefits that are hidden by waiting a year.
Actually, thinking about it, I don't disagree with you. I think that I'm pretty pleasantly surprised by the Switch 2. I think we were both really excited about having new hardware, having more power, having a larger screen. And I think even with all of these rumors about a Switch 2 Lite or a Switch 2 OLED or even a new screen, kind of really aren't that enticing to me. And maybe, and you can tell me your opinion on this, it's more of Nintendo trying to change the narrative, because they just had some poor sales numbers come out for Switch 2 over the holiday, and they've had a lot of negative discourse about their most recent AAA release, which is Metroid Prime 4. And so we've had this large narrative that is negative building, now interrupted by these rumors of a new Switch system in some configuration. We don't know what it is. If it's a Lite, if it's an OLED, if it's a new screen. We have these rumors kind of appear out of nowhere. How do you feel about that, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, maybe it's Nintendo trying to test the waters to see if there's appetite for... Are people waiting to buy the Switch 2 until there's an upgrade? And maybe that's what accounts for the lull in sales over the holiday season. I'm wondering, maybe Nintendo's trying to see, well, what is the price people are willing to pay? Are people interested in double dipping? Would people buy a Switch 2 upgrade even after they've bought the Switch 2 already? I also wonder if maybe Nintendo is hurting financially. Are they trying to get as much bang for their buck while they still have these the ability to build Switches at a consumer level cost, right? If they maybe in the future are seeing huge spikes in build costs, maybe they're trying to release something early and fast, even though it's early in the Switch 2 life cycle.
That's a very interesting angle. There is a little bit of information about that. We do know that we knew the Switch 2 was coming because on Nintendo's annual report, they recorded their largest expense being materials. And I think it was some astronomical number, because it was like the purchase price for the materials. And people were like, this is like 5 years worth of materials for the next console. And so I would guess that they probably have a lot of materials, and maybe that you're right, that it has more to do with maybe their ability to just build the console itself, less so like materials. But also, I don't think that Nintendo is strapped for cash. I think Nintendo has no loans. They don't owe anybody money. And I think their war chest is something like $10 to $20 billion of pure liquidity. So I don't think that they're strapped for cash. But I do think that your operating income and your operating revenue and those type of stats, when it comes to keeping their shareholders happy, are important. And we know that Nintendo is mostly owned by a couple of large families who've owned Nintendo shares for a long time. And I think that with the state of the current Japanese economy, those families might be wanting to hear more positive things rather than negative things when it comes to Nintendo and the Switch 2.
Yeah, that's interesting. So if Nintendo were to release something this year, what would be your response?
I think that we both were really happy to get our own Switch 2s. I think if something new came out, I'd be willing to share. I wouldn't be down to buy one each. I think that, as you know, I'm not really a portable gamer. Like I I mean, I do play things portably, but I prefer to have the extra power.
The extra quality.
Yeah, the extra quality. So, I think that if it's a switch to Lite, I'm not very interested in that.
Yeah.
And even if it's an OLED, then I'm kind of still not interested because we have a very nice TV. So if I want to have, good visual quality, I'll just put it in the dock. It doesn't really appeal to me. How about you? Since you used to have an OLED and you've had 3 switches. Because then you have a Zelda edition Switch, you had an OLED, you had another Switch.
I've had my fair share of Switches.
Yeah, Nintendo's been getting your money.
Yes, but if I were to buy a new console this year, I think there would have to be a larger value than just portability or screen quality. Maybe some type of software improvement, or that's maybe exclusive to the new release. Or maybe there is some hardware power performance improvement, but neither of those have been in the rumors from what I've heard.
You bring up a very interesting thing that a lot of people forget, but I vividly remember because I was in Japan at the time, and so I was able to buy this, but there was something called a new 3DS. Do you remember the refresh?
Yes. They released that in the US, I think.
Yeah, it came to the US, but it initially started out in Japan, and I think it was with a Super Smash Brothers bundle. And I think that even though it was released here, there wasn't much fanfare or interest from the American consumer for the new 3DS. Whereas in Japan, a lot of the marketing and a lot of the conversation was, this is a 3DS that has unlocked potential. And one of the biggest games that was showcased was Xenoblade Chronicles. They had a 3DS edition that only ran on the new 3DS. It didn't run on the regular 3DS. So, you bring an interesting perspective, which is there is a precedent for this kind of weird, out of time update that kind of actually, the Switch had that too. That another thing that a lot of people forget is we actually got a new Switch. Remember, it was the Switch refresh where they changed the boxes from horizontal to vertical, and it came with the new chip that had improvements to battery life and improvements to processing power. And that's when Nintendo unlocked the Nintendo exclusive power profiles that they use for their first party games. They allowed third parties to use them. So there actually is a precedent now that I think about it. The new Switch, the new 3DS, the DSi, which also had added capabilities. So I think you actually hit onto something there that hit on something that there is there. Potentially we do get something that has a little more capabilities, and they know that that's what consumers may be expecting.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think this would be unique because already the Switch 2 might already be filling that role compared to the Switch 1 of being this incremental upgrade and how it's perceived, especially with so many Switch 2 edition versions where it's actually like it's a Switch 1 game that also has a Switch 2 upgrade. So we're saying that on top of that Switch 2 upgrade is a Switch 2 Pro upgrade or something of that nature. I wonder if that's maybe too much to bear for consumers.
It's very interesting you bring that up too, like how to differentiate the console and how software plays a role in that differentiation. And then how they announced all these upgrades for Switch 2 enhanced editions with DLCs. And actually coming up, we have the Super Mario Wonder DLC that's going to be released. And now that I think about it, we were really surprised and anticipating all of these DLCs and enhanced editions around launch time, but they haven't really delivered. We haven't gotten as many enhanced editions as we thought we would get. And these DLCs are coming out way down the pipeline. Kirby came out just, a month or two ago. And now this Super Mario... Is it Super Mario Wonder?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Super Mario Wonder's DLC isn't even out yet. I think it comes out next month. So I think kind of have lost momentum on software being the determinant of, well, this is a new console, so you need to upgrade. I think you really rightfully frame the predicament and the mindset of the consumer, which is, well, I have a Switch 1 and that's just good enough. And I haven't seen anything that really is a killer app to make me move forward. And maybe, like you said, a hardware refresh isn't going to be able to easily differentiate any further because people's perception is Switch 2 is actually Switch Pro.
Right.
Which we all know that from insiders, rumblings before Switch 2 came out and even after, that what we got as Switch 2 basically is what the Switch Pro was going to be. Yeah. So moving on from that, we got news that Metroid Prime 4's director, the director of Prime Games for the last 20 years, has stepped away and left Nintendo. What do you think?
Well, a job well done. 20 years of 5 years of development and then 15 years of waiting and then another development.
The shade.
I mean, I'm wondering if it was voluntary or if there were external factors or if it has anything to do with the success of Metroid Prime 4 or just maybe Metroid Prime 4 was always going to be there. Let's see this through, and then I'm gonna relieve myself from duty, right? I kind of even though there's all this controversy of how well or not well the game ended up being, I do think that maybe this is just the natural progression of I've spent 20 years in this space. How much more energy do I have to develop another cycle of game? But what do you think? You think it has to do with the success of Metroid Prime 4 or the lack of?
I think that there could be some correlation. I mean, when we look at other major creators like Aonuma and Miyamoto, so that's Zelda and Mario respectively, they've stayed around forever. I mean, Shigeru Miyamoto still gets out there on interviews or goes to conferences and basically says this is what the future of Pikmin or Mario or Zelda is going to be. I mean, he's still out there even to this day, and he's supposedly retired. So I think that people stick around. And I do think that maybe that interview that he gave, kind of explaining what happened with the game, what went wrong with the game, was the first signal to me that something was happening and this was different, because the Nintendo that we know is usually very non-expressive. They will not say anything to the consumer that shows weakness, that shows their internal workings, or they're very not transparent. So I think that level of transparency signaled to me, well, this person or the studio must be on rocky road or on thin ice with the powers that be at Nintendo. Yeah. What do you think about the trajectory from that interview to a full departure?
I guess you're right. There are bits and pieces that make it seem that it's maybe less voluntary than you would imagine, right? I'm not sure if I'm mixing up stories, right? But there was also this thing about how the team was told, you're not making a Luigi Mansions game, you're making a Metroid Prime game. Was that what had happened, right? So I could see, well, okay, your job here is done. Let's maybe very matter of factly, maybe it's Nintendo's philosophy to not be emotional in these types of decisions, and maybe they're saying, okay, this game didn't deliver, you must relieve yourself of duty.
Well, that could be the case. And I think that one of the interesting things is everybody's connecting this to Metroid Prime, but I really want to ask you about another aspect of this, which is kind of going under the radar, which is this director, or rather producer, seems to also be very connected to the Paper Mario series. And I know you love Paper Mario, so I want to get your read on that.
That's knowledge to me. That's interesting. Paper Mario has always been a nice undersold area, I think, for Nintendo, right? It's out in left field compared to most of the other genres, which are very maybe light on story, and maybe emphasis on gameplay, whereas the Paper Mario almost takes the opposite approach. Very heavy on story that then provides the backdrop for gameplay mechanics. Maybe that's interesting to say. Now, what is the implication? Are they saying, well, that's not the direction we're going to go into anymore? I'm not sure, right? Maybe in fact it is them saying we need these to then more certainly succeed, which is why we're doing a change in leadership to make sure that these IPs now we need to rely on do take the next step for where gamers want to see them be.
I mean, I think that the weight of making a successful title or a breakout title as a reintroduction of Samus in Metroid Prime 4 was high. And I think there is an interview going around where basically they're clarifying that this is the beginning of a new trilogy. So they were really depending on this game to hook new players and kind of set the tone for what the rest of this trilogy will be. And I think that it'll be interesting to see how things go going forward. Now having basically the person who created and has been there since the beginning of the Prime series, having that person step away. And interestingly, they will be replaced by someone who actually is not new, but also has been there since the beginning of the Prime series, but is a woman.
Yeah.
So now the lead producer on the series will have a closer embodiment to the main character of the series. Do you think that we're going to see any changes, or do you think that excites you? Or
I think it definitely excites me. Whether I think this was intentional on Nintendo's part, I don't think so. It sounds like this person was rising the ranks and was maybe next in line to this role. But I think it's interesting to see what it will deliver. I think definitely a fresh perspective, probably a unique perspective amongst Nintendo leadership, and especially for this type of game, Metroid could definitely use that type of refreshing lens, or maybe a reminder of the opportunity Metroid has that most of the other IPs that Nintendo has does not. Providing a lens that is not just male-centric.
Well, I guess we will have to wait.
What do you think of this, the new person?
I'm not really well versed in this person. To be honest with you, the fact that she has been there since the beginning of Prime is very interesting to me. Yeah. Because I think if you were going to replace the original producer with someone new, and you wanted something drastically different, that you would pick someone actually new, introduce younger talent to the series. So the fact that they are introducing a veteran, but a veteran who will quite certainly have different lens on Samus's story, the fact that they are doing that is interesting to me because, well, I wonder, was the original producer heavy-handed in disallowing certain narratives or changes? And is that maybe the reason why we're getting this change from one veteran to another? Kind of like the reins are off and they're giving this new person the freedom to do whatever they want. Whereas before, this person was there and introducing ideas, but it was always filtered through the lens of the original producer. So I wonder, really what the priorities are in making this change. But, I just pulled up an article to see the age of the other major producers or directors who have been involved in the big Nintendo games, and they're in their 60s. And Shigeru Miyamoto is almost 80 years old, and he's still around.
Wow.
So age-wise, I'm not buying that he just wants to retire and step away. I'm thinking...
At 80?
No, this producer, who I believe that he is only Kensuke Tanabe. I believe he's 58. So, not even retirement age by our standards.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. I think that, while I did not like the way that Metroid Prime 4 ended, I think that the fact that this is a trilogy and, there's rumors or there was some interview to say that this is Silas's story, that means that we'll actually get some of the gaps in the story, some of the parts that I found were rushed. We'll get that filled in hopefully in the next game. So I'm excited about it.
Me too. And I'm interested in this idea of, now there's this new leadership. How much is this gonna affect this new game? Like, is this next game already set in stone? Is the next game already, or is there opportunity for there to be an overhaul with this change in leadership?
Well, we'll see. We'll see if Samus gets more sassy.
Yeah. Or if we can hear them talk.
I mean, honestly, that's kind of like the biggest thing for me. I hope that this new producer kind of gets to set their expectations for the next game, and that's like the top priority. We have to hear Samus's thoughts. Yeah. We have to hear if in the middle of a mission she's like, "Oh man, I'm hungry."
That's true. We don't see Samus eat, never.
Yeah, despite all the things that are in the environment. But okay, let's move on. I think that with this first departure of an executive producer of basically a tentpole game, basically. This is one of the big three. We have Zelda, we have Metroid, and we have Mario. And so we have a departure related to this huge franchise. Some people would say is a integral part of the Nintendo Triforce, right?
Yeah.
And I think what's even more interesting is that we have another departure around this time, which is the departure of Bowser, Doug Bowser, who famously followed up Reggie Fils-Aimé, who was the beloved president of Nintendo of America, mastermind marketer, mastermind gamer, lover of Animal Crossing, very famously played 45 minutes every single day for like 3 years and posted it online. He followed Reggie Fils-Aimé, and there were huge expectations for what he would be able to do, and a lot of excitement because, well, his last name is Bowser, so yeah, he could only do good. What do you think about this, that he's moving on?
I think honestly, I think his time has been uneventful, and I think maybe that is exactly what they wanted out of this leadership transition, right? Kind of when you think of companies at this size who have such notable leadership, when you're trying to make a transition in leadership, oftentimes you need a interim, someone who can just keep the lights on, keep things steady, not rocking the boat, not making any big changes. And for someone who was named Bowser, which you would kind of think with the opposite, that I think that is what they accomplished and they succeeded.
Do you think there's any correlation between the fact that Retro Studios is actually an American studio and they worked on Metroid Prime 4, not really well received, and the fact that Nintendo just had a very poor sales holiday? They were expecting to sell some astronomical figure like 24 million units this year, and they obviously are now rethinking their projections for sales. The US is obviously their second largest market. Do you think that his departure is related to any of those things, that maybe Nintendo of Japan or its shareholders were unhappy with his American leadership or American management of an American developer and a poor American performance for the holiday? Or you think none of that really factored in?
I think it could play a factor, right? I think I almost see of maybe this being the action that they're taking in order to get to this next phase. So because they're seeing maybe this drop in notoriety or sales, then now they realize, okay, well, now we need to go to phase 3, which maybe they have internal of, okay, this is going to be a huge refresh of the Nintendo brand, either in price or quality or in gaming. So your job as interim is done.
I could totally see that.
Yeah, so I don't think Bowser did anything wrong. And in fact, I think to what Nintendo wanted, he probably did things correctly. I don't think they were looking for fanfare. I don't think they were looking for showmanship. I think they were looking for someone who could do their job well and satisfactorily.
Well, word on the street is that he moved to Hasbro, which is really interesting because Hasbro is not a gaming company in the way that we think of it. I do believe they have like an early childhood education line of like, I guess you could say computation light devices. And obviously they have tie-ins for IP to produce toys. Do you think that it's kind of awkward that maybe now he's moved to Hasbro and Nintendo and Hasbro may have deals or may have future deals after the movies to make toys, and now he's over there?
It could be. I think that's probably is the most American thing of this all, right? Of maybe in Japan you resign
in disgrace.
Not in this, but like versus like in America, right? You are always kind of climbing the ladder. You're going to your next position.
Yeah.
I think from Bowser's side, this probably was advantageous, either in responsibility or role or even salary, right?
Well, I think he's moving to be on the board of directors, which board of directors can be unpaid positions.
Yeah, usually they're unpaid, but they're paid in power, right?
True.
So maybe he's trying to this is what they do. He probably is getting a nice package to leaving Nintendo. So maybe he has a few years of, okay, now I just want to be in a position of influence without necessarily the full responsibility, or maybe he is just a gamer at heart, right? Maybe he appreciates this domain.
Well, as far as I think we know, he had never been a gamer before joining Nintendo. He was just some regular person, which is so interesting because I believe Reggie Fils-Aimé also was not really a big gamer focused person. He actually, I think, worked at Pizza Hut before as marketing.
That's surprising.
Yeah. But, you know, I'm sure that Bowser's happy with the work that he did. He took Nintendo through one of the most tumultuous yet profitable times of its history. I mean, think about Animal Crossing selling 40 million units, right? And Mario Kart selling, what is it, like 85 million units? So he ushered them through kind of like Nintendo's prime time, also smashed together with obviously the hardest time navigating the whole world being in disarray. And I could totally believe that he's just like, well, I did what I had to do. I'm tired. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Give me my severance and let me go be on this board of directors for the toy company. But it does kind of make me think of something said by some other industry players recently in an interview where they previously had dealings with Nintendo and they have kind of had a separation. They no longer have dealings with Nintendo. And then in a new business relationship, they came into contact with Nintendo and come to find out from, you know, what they're saying out publicly, Nintendo wasn't very happy about seeing them in this new space, in this new realm, while not being under their control. They were like, oh, we're not doing business together anymore. We're not working together anymore. Why are you here? So,
and who was this? Who was this?
Well, I don't want to say who
okay.
the people are, but I think that you can guess. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how significantly Nintendo works with Hasbro, if at all. I'm not sure if they've worked together in the past, but Hasbro is a huge toy maker. I would be really surprised if they have not. But we'll have to just wait and see. You know, talking about these things kind of made me think of something, which is, what do you think about the new controllers? So, new controllers for Switch 1, the new colorways used to be like a huge thing everyone was excited about. And some of them kind of look like the character outfits. What sticks out to me is like the Wario purple and goldenrod, right, as a colorway for the controllers. Nintendo announces new colors for the controllers, and basically you can't even see them. What do you feel about that?
They're subtle. I think this leads to two things. One, that this really was a Switch 1 Pro, right? Both in hardware and in design philosophy, right? It's a very subtle, maybe almost professional looking aesthetic, right? Versus the Switch 1 blasting with various different colors, very gaming, very kids, very pop.
Are you interested in getting the new controllers?
I mean, no. Until my controllers break, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I've ever been allured by the colors of the Joy-Con specifically. To be honest, I think.
Are you a person who did you start the Switch 1 generation with gray controllers? Because I got a Switch with gray controllers.
No, I started with the red and blue.
Okay, so you started from a place. You started from a place of privilege, and now you're saying, well, I don't really care about the colors, but you clearly got the red and blue, neon red and blue, rather than getting the gray ones. So, well, I guess what changed?
Maybe because these are so subtle, right? Maybe if they were maybe larger pops of color, they'd be more alluring. But I think this is also Nintendo struggling to differentiate this from the Switch 1, right? So maybe they're using this like subtle design aesthetic to somehow be able to make something differentiable from the Switch 1. Because if you see them both on the display at a big box store, how are you going to know which one to pick? Just you might accidentally pick a Switch 1 Joy-Con or a Switch 2 Joy-Con, and the realization of, well, why is there even this whole other product when they look exactly the same?
No, I totally get that. And that brings up a really good point, that they've already started this kind of way of differentiating the two products, the premium from the base. And, if they were to do fully bright controllers, then that kind of separation will fall apart. And additionally, I think it probably is pretty hard for them to put color into the anodized metal that they use for the body of the Switch 2.
Yeah, maybe it is a functional issue rather than aesthetic. I do think maybe back to our first topic, if the Switch Lite rumors are true, Switch 2 Lite rumors,
you think it's made out of plastic?
It could be maybe their entry into whimsy of okay, let's give something that has a joyful aesthetic, colorful, kids-oriented, and then let's leave the Switch 2 product very minimalist, professional-looking, and the Joy-Cons follow that trend.
I mean, I think that from what you're saying, there's a lot of potential for whatever this is, and a lot of potential excitement, and a return to, like you said, whimsy, and excitement about the hardware itself beyond just its capabilities. But that made me think of a question. What Nintendo game are you looking forward to this year? What are you excited about, if anything?
Yeah, honestly, I don't even know what's being released. I mean, I don't know how much. Well, actually, probably we'll hear about this soon. With this 30th year anniversary, but I'm probably looking forward to the next installment of Pokemon. Yeah. So the next generation. See what they have in store. And then also see what, if any, they take from the Legends series. Because generally there's been this, Legends is the side, or it's a different series. But with the new, I forgot what it was called, but the Pokemon battling game, maybe then that gives opportunity for the mainline series game to take from Legends.
Is that the new game that's kind of like Pokemon Coliseum?
It is there was this online thing called
Pokemon Unite?
Pokemon Showdown, where you're able to select your... It's just mainly for battling, right? Okay. So you're able to create your teams, create your status, your skills spread, and just strictly focus on battling, right? That's what this game seems to be about. And people are maybe suggesting, well, okay, now that's going to be our de facto turn-based battling game, which then maybe this new entry into the mainline series game will no longer be turn-based, for example.
Very interesting. To be honest with you, I think that from the leaks, they have a lot of directions that they can go, and I find a lot exciting. But besides remakes, I think it would be so cool if we actually got something like the Dragon Quest 1 and 2 remakes that truly returns back to the top-down, sprites, turn-based battle type of system. I think that would be so cool. And I didn't really see that in the leaks, but I'm all for Pokemon becoming more kind of diversified yet specialized in each game. But when I think about what I'm excited for this year and Switch 2 Pokemon didn't immediately come to mind for me.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in, I hate to say this because it's weird. I haven't even finished any of the games related, but the new Fire Emblem, which I just restarted 3 houses for like the 5th time, and I'm gonna try to get through it.
Yeah.
But what I really thought about was not Pokemon. I thought of Fire Emblem. Actually, I totally forgot. See, just so forgettable. No, I mean, not forgettable, but I am kind of concerned because I'm like, we have Switch 2 now. We've had so many games come out and so many, promised enhancements to games we already have. And to be honest, I think we both can say there are a lot of games in our backlog from Switch 1 that we haven't completed yet. And while I'm happy that I get to play those games with better performance, I'm kind of really looking for something new. I think I'm kind of excited for Pokopia because it looks so cute, and I love Animal Crossing. I've always loved Animal Crossing, and I love like the kind of mashup of Pokemon and Animal Crossing. But yeah, when I look into the future, I'm not seeing anything particularly interesting. But I will say that there's one thing that gives me hope, and that's Nintendo's lauded studio, Monolith Soft. They are the studio that makes the Xenoblade games, and they've been working for a long time on some unreleased projects, and I'm hoping that we get an announcement or we get to see something soon. But that did actually remind me of something that's not Switch exclusive that just had a more extensive showing at the Microsoft Developers Direct. And that's actually Game Freak's multi-platform game, which is, I think, called Birth of Regeneration or Blade of Regeneration.
Yeah, I haven't heard of this. What is this?
So this is a game that Game Freak is basically releasing multi-platform. It's not their first multi-platform game, but it's their first like AAA game that is multi-platform, and it's kind of their step away from Pokemon. It's a game that looks nothing like Pokemon, plays nothing like Pokemon, and they're trying to prove that after all of the complaining we've done about Pokemon's graphics and performance, that it wasn't them, that it was Nintendo. I mean, that's very clear from seeing the art style and the performance and how things are going.
So we have seen trailers about this game?
Yeah, so I think maybe it's skipping your mind because the trailer was so short the first time, but when it premiered, I think it was like a 45-second trailer, like a shorter trailer. Just a couple of days ago at the Microsoft Developer Direct, they showed an extensive trailer and they had interviews in it. So it explained like their gameplay philosophy. It also kind of explained that they really want to differentiate and show that they can do something different than Pokemon. They really want to show that they can do good graphics. And that kind of is exciting to me. It's not Switch exclusive or Switch related necessarily, but I think that's also kind of the problem that I'm touching on, which is we both have Switch 2s, which were quite expensive, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of interesting games coming up this year. And even their cash cow, Game Freak, has now gone multi-platform. So what is Nintendo doing for this year or the future? I think that's a question that we hope to get an answer to soon, right?
Yeah, I think definitely internal to Nintendo, probably there's lots of big conversations happening. From what we can see outside, right, it seems like they need to be doing something, and I think Nintendo also recognizes that. What their action is or what's the result, I'm not sure, right? But I think definitely something needs to happen. I think Nintendo is aware that something needs to happen. What they decide that has to be, who knows?
Well, I guess we'll be waiting on that direct.
Yep.
The first one of this year.
Let's go.
Until then,
Stay sassy.
stay sassy.